terrified, really terrified at that point.
The FBI calls the massacre in San Bernardino an act of terrorism. This looks like a game changer.
He did raise his hand with a straight-edge razor in it, and he was shot.
A fatal police shooting in Miami Beach 24 hours ago, now under scrutiny with body cam footage and bystanders' videos.
And the cost of commuting, you are now paying a pretty penny to drive on MDX roads. Are the tolls too high?
We have a lot to talk about this morning. Good morning and welcome. Again this week, though, fear and terror dominated the headlines. In a sudden scheduling today, the president now plans a rare national address on it tonight.
8 o'clock this evening from the Oval Office. The investigation into that massacre in San Bernardino finds that the couple who began that shooting rampage were inspired by ISIS, and they may have been in touch with foreign terrorists. There is a lot of fallout, including fallout for American Muslims who fear their religion and their culture will be demonized by this couple's actions. Investigators are still trying to get a clearer picture of what drove Syed Farouk and his wife Tashfeen Malik to carry out the massacre. FBI agents are scanning their computers and cell phones, looking for contacts or other connections with ISIS or other radical groups in the days and weeks before the attack.
We have hundreds of people running down leads all over the world on this, trying to understand the electronic record around these two killers.
President Obama, in a speech from the Oval Office tonight, is going to address national security and safety concerns.
To give perspective from South Florida's Muslim community, Saman Movasagi Gonzalez joins us this morning. She is an immigration attorney and former board member of the Florida Muslim Bar Association. And welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on an important conversation.
We appreciate it, Saman, a former president, in fact, of the Florida Muslim Bar Association. As a Muslim, as an American, as an attorney, what did you think on Wednesday afternoon when you heard about this horrific massacre in California?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank both of you for allowing me to come on the show today and discuss these important matters that are really affecting our nation and our communities. When I first heard of the shootings that happened, the only word that comes to mind was just pure shock. I mean, shock, terror. It really saddened me to see what was happening. You know, 14 innocent people's lives were lost. I didn't know what to make of the incidences that were going on over there.
Well, we all shared that sense of shock,
definitely.
disbelief, horror. But did you at some point quickly kind of say to yourself, we loyal Americans who are Muslims are going to pay a price for this?
I don't know if paying the price is what I was thinking at the moment. It was more, if these people are in fact, you know, Muslims, they carried it through. A lot of, you know, the feeling I had also was embarrassment. Their acts are not representative of Muslims. Their acts are not representatives of Muslim Americans.
Or Islam?
Or Islam, not at all. And now we're going to have to go through, you know, explaining it and kind of defending and isolating ourselves from their acts to what Muslims and Americans in this country and what their values and beliefs really are.
You know, I think it's important to say that we are very mindful that inviting someone to sit and have this conversation, you have the pressure of almost speaking for a whole community, which is not all that fair. So with that in mind, this is a conversation that we have to have about this. What happened Wednesday was, I heard it characterized as the worst act of terrorism since 9/11.
Sure.
And once again, you have the politicians and the candidates coming out and talking about extremist jihad, extreme Islam. How do you separate what people are calling extreme Islam, and maybe that's not even a fair thing to say, with Islam? How do you separate for people who are not familiar with their culture, not familiar, don't have neighbors who practice Islam? How do you separate those two things successfully?
Well, as a Muslim American, that comes from within. You have to act according to the values and the decrees of Islam. You have to act according as an American. You are going to be able to broadcast that to the people that you come across. You know, for me to come up and try to convince you, you know, just by my words and telling you, well, that Islamic jihadic radicalization that's going on is not what I am. I'm not going to be able to prove that to you unless I'm acting the way that you're going to be able to believe what I'm saying, right? So with that being said, you have to have more knowledge, you have to have more information, you have to have more dialogue with the community, with the people in the community, so that they don't have that fear or fear-mongering coming at them.
Yeah. Saman, again, we need to know, and we will learn in the coming days and weeks much more about this couple, but it appears that Tashfeen Malik her family had lived in Saudi Arabia, and it appears that she had radicalized her husband. But there is in Islam, in Saudi Arabia, a branch of Wahhabism, which, a kind of a Sunni extremist branch. We don't know that she practiced that, but I mean, have you thought about the possibility of that's what influenced her?
That would be, I just think that there's just too many unknowns at this point to take it that far in terms of the mind frame that she was going on. And I don't think, especially as an attorney, I don't think that we have those answers yet.
No, too speculative about that. Let me, if I can, let me ask you, we've already seen sort of the fallout begin yesterday in Virginia at a place called Liberty University. Jerry Falwell Jr. is the president, son of the famous religious leader from the 70s, 80s, 90s. And he gave a speech to students at the school in which he said, get a concealed weapons permit, and if you have to, essentially use it against Muslims. I want to play this clip and get your reaction to it. Do we have that queued up? Well, I'm sorry, we don't, but I sort of think I paraphrased it well. But when you hear something like that, what do you think?
It saddens me, I'm an attorney, I'm also a mother. And for me to have my children grow up in this type of society where they have to be fearful that they're Muslim, and here you have a supposedly respected professional head of a university coming out and saying to arm, his constituents to shoot against Muslims. I mean, it's baffling. We're in 2015. How can you, justify that type of language? It
was not even 24 hours, the New York Daily News or the New York Post, one of the New York Posts, I think it was, and we may even have it to show you. Not even 24 hours before anybody was identified or characterized, this was the cover, Muslim killers, to your point. These are family and kids are growing up with this in the public venue. Have you had any personal experiences because of what's transpiring now for you or your family?
As of right now, I can say, thank God, no, we haven't. I can say, though, that everybody is definitely on high alert. And,
high alert for?
They're just taking more precaution. Because it looks like right now in the United States, a lot of people are very wary and they're very hesitant and they're scared. And this has a lot to do with that type of, news headline. I mean, you have the headline that says Muslim killers out there. I mean, you're going to be scared because you don't know everything that's going on.
And a couple of weeks ago, Donald Trump suggested that there be a national database of all American Muslims.
Or the ID badge, or, these things, and they play on to the fear of people, and this is what is going on. And the same thing happened, you can bring back the history of what happened to the Japanese, too, in the, 1942 with the World War II. It's the same type of playing on fear, and this is not where we are as a country. This is not going to help us solve this problem, and all it's doing is playing into fanatic radicalization across the world, where they want to make problems in the United States and divide the Muslims with, non-Muslims here.
You and I were talking earlier, and you said something that I thought was very interesting. It's no longer, with things that happen like this in San Bernardino, it's no longer on another continent. It's no longer the borders being protected from somebody coming in. It is a person next door who has become, for whatever, radicalized for whatever reason. And we watch the families of these people and the neighbors saying, oh my gosh, I never knew. We worked with them, we never knew. How much more frightening is that that's the climate now, that people are looking at their neighbors.
It is very frightening, but at the same way, it's also frightening, you know, with other stories that happen in the U.S. too, and other people who their neighbors go and kill people, and even the man in Ohio who had those women locked up in their house, that their neighbors had no idea that those women were there. So you're never going to have that crystal ball to know what's going on with someone there. All you can do is be, you know, observant and really have that knowledge that no, all Muslims are not like this. The religion does not call for killing like this. And, you know, as a Muslim American, you have to be able to handle yourself and, you know, be an active member of society and communicate too. This is very important. I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you, I mean, I'm trying to think, I think we're all trying to think, what is a way to close the gap so that we're not divided? One way, possibly, is for a mosque and an imam to say, come and see us, come to see that we are your neighbors, we are the people you work with, and our kids go to school with your kids, and that we share more values than not.
And this definitely happens. You know, I'm the former president of the Florida Muslim Bar Association. I'm a current member of the board as well, and other religious organizations down here in South Florida. And we have a very, very transparent working relationship with law enforcement. We have a very open door relationship with the director of the FBI, Mr. Piros, with the U.S. Attorney's Office, Mr. Ferrer. We have the State Attorney's Office in Miami-Dade, the Broward County Sheriff's Office, Scott Israel. They have came to our mosque. We have broken bread. We have eaten together. I mean, they need us as much as we need them, and we keep that relationship very open and transparent.
Well, that's all positive, and we hope you continue it, and invite us to come.
Definitely, that would be great.
Local 10 News will be there too.
Definitely.
For what it's worth, you're a wonderful accidental spokeswoman for an entire community.
Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate it.
Up next, it has been, believe it or not, a year since the highway toll rate hikes they called Tollmageddon. Remember that? Well, where has that money gone? We'll have some answers when we come back.
Well, if there was ever one issue that unites South Florida, it is traffic congestion. The frustrations on the road are growing here exponentially, especially on this Art Basel weekend. There's no question that getting from point A to point B has become time-consuming, expensive, and frustrating.
Well, let's talk about that. Luis Martinez is chairman of the board at MDX, the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority. Also with us today is Chris Wills, who is with a grassroots group based in Miami called Drive. And that means no more tolls is the theme.
That's right. Drivers ready to improve, vote, and empower. We're saying no more tolls without voter approval.
Well, we'll talk all about that. Thank you so much, both, for coming in this morning.
Pleasure to be here today.
Chair Martinez, can we start with you? I know that the big public relations push for Miami-Dade Expressway Authority the past couple of weeks is that you've been giving rebates, toll rebates.
Absolutely.
Where did that money come from? And are we paying too much in tolls if you can rebate the money?
That's a great question. And let me start by talking about how excited we are that 38,000 checks went out this week to Sun Pass holders who registered for our cashback program. The program is basically that those who use our 5 MDX roadways are going to get 30% back of the amount that they paid into our toll system for a 6-month period of this year, between January of this year through the end of June of this year.
What's the formula, Louis, for giving people back? I mean, you have to register, but you have to reach a threshold, don't you?
Excellent question, Mike. Initially, we had 83,000 people actually register. Of those, 38,000 qualified. The majority that did not qualify, which was 40,000, spent less than $50 in the 6-month period. So they
spend 50 or more,
correct,
and then you stand to get a rebate.
Exactly. And of those who qualified, 55% spent between $50 to $150 over that 6-month period. So basically, a majority of the people that registered spent between $8 to $25 a month on our toll roads.
So your point is that people aren't spending as much as they think they're spending because they don't even meet the threshold to get the rebate. So tolls are, I'm hearing from you that, hey, tolls aren't so bad after all because you're not spending that much money. However, they did increase a year ago this week, I guess.
Correct.
Some 50% for a lot of people.
Yes.
There's a lot, there's so many more gantries on your 5 highways that people have to go through. What is that toll hike for? Why was it even necessary to do that if you've got the money now to give back?
Well, the first is the amount that we're giving back is about $2 million, $2.2 million.
Where did it come from?
Well, what it comes from is what we do at the beginning of the year, we have a budget, and we establish that this is the amount we need to satisfy all our financial obligations. And like any family, quite often at the end of the budgetary year, you turn out to have a little bit more money than you expected to have.
But you know where that comes from. I know where my extra money comes from in my budget. Where did yours come from?
Well, it comes from the toll, the people who pay the tolls. But
No. What in that budget was less expensive than you thought it would be?
A combination of things. Number one, we actually had more people use the roads than we expected. Our roads actually, the amount of use was between 2 and 4% increase this year than the year before. There's been obviously a reduction in some of the expenses that we needed insofar as our administrative costs, as well as costs relating to some of the contracts we were done. So we were more efficient in what we did, which allowed us to have about $2.2 million. Now, we did look into whether or not we should reduce the tolls based upon that, but the reality is that 2.2 would have equated to about half a cent per gantry. The reason.
All right, Luz, hold on just a minute. I want to get Chris into the conversation. Chris,
thank you, Mike.
We know there is no free lunch and there's almost no free toll in South Florida. What I'm hearing Lewis say is, hey, we've got to pay to be able to have the privilege to drive on these roads. What's wrong with that?
Absolutely, there's nothing wrong with that. What we're saying is right now, our community and communities across the state have no say. When Jackson Memorial Hospital wanted to increase our taxes to fund bonds to improve Jackson,
yeah, we
got to vote on it. We got to do it for the school board, for the Pets Trust, for the courthouse. But MDX is a board of unelected officials. At the Department of Transportation, they're unelected officials. They're all making decisions to increase taxes, to impose additional taxes.
Yeah, but they're
and
answerable to the, they're answerable to the people who appoint them, and it's what, the governor, the county commission,
correct,
who appoint these members. So it's not as if they're free agents.
Well, indirectly, they are certainly appointed to their positions, but what most people feel is that that indirect connection is kind of causing a gap between the people that are the decision makers and the frustration that is in the community. So what you're seeing is people are very upset because, you know, Chairman Martinez, who we have great respect for, he's a great guy, but he just said that, you know, the majority of families have extra money at the end of their year in their budget. Right now, we're still recovering, you know, from a major economic recession, and these 17 new tolls that were added to the MDX highways last year, it's not their roads, but FDOT charging $10.50 on I-95 on those express lanes.
So there are layers of tolls that MDX.
But I take offense because we have nothing to do with the toll roads on I-95 and the $10 that they're doing on the managed lane.
But you work with FDOT.
But we have no control over their toll
Understood.
roads.
Understood. Can I just go back to something you were saying for a minute? The other examples of what we voted on, those are all entities that take property tax.
Mm-hmm.
There's a half penny for Jackson. We pay school board taxes. This is more of a user fee because you don't pay the toll unless you use the roads.
Right. Yeah, and so recently Chairman Martinez made that point where when property taxes are raised, even if you're renting and you're not personally owning the property, that tax is passed on to you in the form of higher rent. Well, the same thing happens to us when we have a toll increase. The people that are paying the most tolls in Miami-Dade County and across the state are companies who have fleets of vehicles, who have trucks that deliver our products and services to our markets, and they are paying thousands of dollars that are being passed on to all of us in the form of higher prices on goods and services. So it impacts all of us. And so it's very disheartening when we hear that, you know, people on MDX's board constantly complain that they're being vilified, that, you know, the community is really angry at them because they're raising these tolls, and they're saying that we're not giving them enough credit for the good things they're doing. And we're saying, well, our petition solves that. We're taking away the burden from them, letting voters here decide whether or not.
Chris, I have to say, tolls. And Lois, let me ask you to weigh in on this.
Sure.
It will be a cold day in Tallahassee if the legislature ever passes a constitutional amendment that it's going to call for a referendum on toll hikes. I just don't think that's ever going to happen. But the point that Chris makes is a good one. I mean, if you are a school teacher and you're making $42,000 a year, your net take-home pay isn't very much. You got to drive to work, and if you were paying $3 or $4 a day to drive on MDX roads, I mean, that can be a burden.
Absolutely, there is a burden. But what Chris is failing to mention is the reason we have so many gantries now is now you're paying for what you use as a roadway. So instead of paying, for example, in the past where you had 2 gantries, one at 97 and an additional one at 17, and you'd pay $1.25 here and $1.25 there, here you're spending 70 cents for the amount of the road you use. In some occasions, when you exit, it's 25 cents.
So you're saying it's more fair now,
It's more fair.
equitable than
Correct.
it had been.
And more importantly, our projects are going to create 10,000 more jobs during this 5-year work project. That's
Construction?
Going to construction jobs here, and we're going to infuse over $1 billion into the system as well. And part of being a leader is making tough decisions and making those kind of decisions. All of my board members are volunteers. We don't get paid for doing this. We are not. We don't have a magic sum pass. I pay the same toll road as all others. We make decisions, and I have no problem with the decision that is why I have a problem with this petition, because I think we elect and appoint leaders to make decisions, and if we're held accountable, we should.
But Chair Martinez voted against the toll increase.
I was just going to ask him that. We are out of time, but very quickly, why did you vote against the toll hikes last year?
Because at the time we were discussing between whether it was going to be a 60-cent toll hike or a 70-cent toll hike per gantry. I felt that at the time that there was an opportunity that we could do a lot with the 60 cents and not the 70 cents. There was going to be an increase either way. It was just the amount. But if you think about how much we've accomplished, we're going to be done with these projects within the next 5 years. All of the major logger jams will be done by 2020.
Oh, you are on tape saying that now.
Well,
we
yes,
are going to
we
be
will resurrect
monitoring
this,
that.
but
And I'm ready for that, and I'll be here for it.
Ms. Martinez, we
Thanks.
hope you're right. Chris
Thanks so
Wills,
much. Appreciate
thank
it.
you for coming in.
Thank you.
Up next, we're taking it all to the round table. Stick around.
Thank you.
It is that time again, time to hear from some of the best and brightest in South Florida on the major news stories of the week.
And we have got a great group this morning to analyze and opine. Our Powerhouse Roundtable today includes Dr. Marvin Dunn, a social psychologist who taught for many years at FIU, chaired the psychology department. He's also an accomplished writer.
Bernadette Pardo is a veteran South Florida journalist in broadcast and print. These days, you can hear her on WQBA radio, read her in El Nuevo Herald. And Ed Pizzoli is a prominent Fort Lauderdale attorney, the president of the Tripp Scott law firm, active player in state Republican Party politics.
Good
To all
morning,
of you.
everybody.
Good morning.
Great to have you come in.
Well, we have a primed pump this morning for you. We want to start this morning, I think, with the video of a Miami Beach police shooting from about 24 hours ago. If we can play it while we speak, if anyone has not seen this yet, it is a bystander's video front to back of a confrontation with a suspected bank robber, the man you see without a shirt, who is confronted for several minutes, who apparently is not conforming to what police want him to do. The end of that is one of the officers shoots a taser and takes him down, and almost simultaneously another officer, he was armed with this straight razor you see from a barbershop, another officer shoots and kills him. Very preliminary information, as you might expect, but here is a case where we see it play out. And in the national zeitgeist right now, Dr. Dunn, what should we be doing as a community about this particular incident at the moment?
Each time something like this happens, we have to wait until we get the facts. We have seen in other places things get totally out of control because social media is used, cell phones are used, misinformation is passed around. Wait until the facts come out, until you can tell what really happened based upon evidence, and then move forward. The worst thing to do is to jump the gun and start accusing people of things that we're not in a position to substantiate.
In this particular case, I think the photographer, who is a professional photographer, who took that video.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, he was on his way to work, apparently, and he stopped and saw this, and they asked him the same question. He said, well, at first sight, it looks as if the guy was just holding a switchblade, and that wasn't a terrible threat. However, he added, in light of what we're living, there was also talk that the guy might have had access to a bomb. which is a different ballgame when you're talking about immediate reaction from the police.
Right.
Yeah, and I can't agree. I agree totally with what Dr. Dunn said. It's really, let's wait and get the facts, because there are some facts we do know, that the gentleman in question tried to rob a bank unsuccessfully, and then went into this barbershop and really sort of terrorized the group in the barbershop. Police came and got him out of there, but I think we really do need to wait for the facts.
You know what, I think the biggest question, anyone watching the video, very rarely do we see something play out front to back like that. And I think the biggest question I know I would have when they're ready to start answering questions is, it looks like one officer made the decision to use a taser and another officer decided to use a gun.
Almost simultaneously.
Almost simultaneously. So the question is, how did those decisions come about in these two trained officers? Who was right,
Probably based upon their sense of threat and fear. One officer might have felt that the situation did not require lethal force. The other thought that it did. That has to be all sorted out in
It's
proper
not
time.
the first time it's happened here. I remember a guy coming out with a machete once. Was also, there were questions why, if you can shoot, you know, a taser.
Right. But I think that part of the reason, I mean, it's startling video, and this also speaks to the age of cell phone video and professional video. And in fact, the police officer who shot, I believe, Glenna told me, had a body camera on, which the video is not yet available. It will be available at some point, but it is just a new era in law enforcement, is it not, Ed?
It is a new era, but I think that we owe those who protect us every day the benefit of at least the initial doubt that since they're putting their lives on the line, I think that we cannot disrespect the level of harm that they put themselves in for our benefit. So they get the benefit of the doubt. Let's let this play out.
Right. Let's not rush to judgment. Well, if we can, I want to move on to what the nation has been talking about since Wednesday afternoon, and what President Obama will talk about tonight. And Dr. Dunn, I just have to get you to weigh in here. What we saw in Paris shook this nation. What happened in Colorado Springs a week ago shook us, but I think that this incident in San Bernardino is of another magnitude. Homegrown terrorism, an American-born guy who was well-liked by the people he worked with, didn't seem to be an extremist. He and his wife go in and shoot and kill county employees. I mean, it's just shocking.
Absolutely. But you know, in my view, the only weapon that terrorists have, be they homegrown individuals like this or even those who are sponsored by more organized organizations, their weapon is fear. That's the single weapon they have. If they can make us frightened enough to stop doing the things we normally do, then they win. And I hope the President says tonight that what we need to do as a nation is, one, recognize that, yes, there is a danger, and yes, we do need to declare war against these people, and we do need to take off the heads of the snakes as we find them. But don't panic. Don't let these people take over our lives. Don't let these people stop us from going to places that we would go. Be careful, be observant, but don't let terrorism use the one weapon they have to strangle this nation.
But I'm scared. I'm very scared.
We should be scared.
The reason I'm scared goes beyond what happened, which was horrible. The reason I'm scared is that I cannot comprehend how a woman who has given birth to a 6-month-old child, who is the center of the universe for any woman who has given birth, can do this. I get goosebumps thinking that anything like this can happen, and that's why I'm so scared, because how do you contain that? How can you can't wrap your head around it.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That was the first thing, before we even knew who this woman was or what she might have done. The first thing I think any parent who's had a baby, who knows the feeling of you have a baby and you don't matter anymore, you're there to defend a child. How does that woman go do that?
You're applying.
Thank you.
You're applying Western civilized discussion and mores to somebody who was totally and completely radicalized by ISIS.
I thought it was a human thing.
No, I completely agree.
Well, I mean, I must say, that, and that's what I want to hear from the President tonight. I want to hear that we are at war. And I'm going to go to Congress tomorrow and asked them to declare war on ISIL or ISIS or anyone who wants to commit jihad against what the Western civilization.
War in the legal sense?
Yes, and I think he should do it because that is a way for him to have a Franklin Roosevelt moment on December 7th
Will it
tomorrow.
make a difference in surveillance? How are we to know that the guy next door was just a little baby and is taking? How do we know that if we do not have
You first need to recognize that there is somebody, a group of people out there who want to destroy our way of life, and we need to recognize that as a country. We don't need to be afraid, but we need to understand that our leaders are using every resource possible that the United States has to protect us. That's what I want to hear from the president tonight.
But if you have a balance, and you are a psychologist, you should know about balance, and you look at numbers, since 9/11, you have had a total of 45 people killed by jihadist terror, a total of 48 people killed by domestic terrorism, and a total of 200,000 people killed by gun violence.
Thank you.
Math
All right.
is
Thank you.
pretty
All
obvious.
right, well,
Talk
great
about
point,
that.
Bernie, and we're going to come back and talk about whether we need stricter gun control laws. California has the strictest in the country, and they still have these guns, which had been bought legally. So stay with us. We'll be back with more of the Roundtable in just a minute. Welcome back on this Sunday morning live in our studio, the Roundtable. Ed Pizzoli of Fort Lauderdale, Bernadette Pardo, and Dr. Marvin Dunn. Ed, immediately after we began learning about this terrible massacre, an immediate argument ensued over gun control. Thursday night, the Senate voted not to impose requirements that would say anybody who was on the national security no-fly list should not be able to buy a gun, and the Senate said no. They should still be able to buy a gun, and frankly, a lot of people think that's just absurd.
Well, it's interesting that the first reaction to what happened in California was we have to have more gun control. So let's go back to the point where we should continue our lives and we should enjoy our freedoms as Americans, and notwithstanding what those terrorists want us to do. And part of that is the Second Amendment. Whether we like it, whether you like it, whether someone else likes it, I don't think it belongs in this conversation. This is an issue of Islamic radical terrorists who want to destroy our way of life. It does not belong in a gun control debate. We can have that debate, and in fact, to have that debate today dilutes the issue that we face.
Well,
I don't think so. I totally disagree with that. When you see the amount of weapons that people have access to that have no use except to destroy human life, and people can buy those things without any challenge whatsoever, and to try to separate that from this discussion, I think that's disingenuous. Of course it's relevant. These people were able to arm themselves legally with powerful weapons and use them against American citizens.
They armed themselves in California, had the strictest gun laws in the country. They had a garage full of bomb-making factory inside the garage of pipe bombs, which no legislation would prevent. And so what you're saying to me is I want confidence that my government, the one thing the federal government should do is protect every citizen from outside forces, from in or outside our area, and they're not doing it. When you have a president who says that this is the JV team and that ISIS is contained and then Paris occurs, then we have a problem. And you cannot switch the subject to gun control.
All right,
That's
two
not
things.
fair.
The guns in this case, not the pipe bombs. The guns in this case, my understanding is, were all purchased legally.
By a neighbor, a Hispanic neighbor who bought it for him.
Right.
Point being, though, that
California's
California's strict gun laws would not have prevented it. But to your point, with this new idea that there were no borders involved, that these are Americans who are now being radicalized, coupled with gun law, is that the game changer that takes this very political debate where the country is really evenly divided between gun law and gun protection? Does the fact that people are now radicalized within our borders who live under these gun laws, does that change what we should be doing?
But this is not the typical Unabomber case. This is a case of a couple who has ties to the Middle East, the mother was born in Pakistan from a Pakistani family who was, the rumor is that she came over as a plant and was radicalized before she even came over. And now she acted upon it, and they know that she pledged her allegiance to ISIL. Let us not lose focus as to what the real demon here is. It is not gun control in the United States. It's not the fight over the Second Amendment, over this regulation or that regulation. It is about the survival of Western civilization from a group of jihadists that want to destroy it.
If they had not had semi-automatic weapons, would they, in 4 minutes, have been able to kill all these people and leave all these people wounded? Why, even with the Second Amendment, which is wonderful because it prevents tyranny, but why AK-47s? Why does it contemplate?
Did it stop? Did it stop the violence in Paris? Paris, in France, has the strictest gun laws, and it did not stop the violence in Paris.
Well, that's not. I mean, there's nothing that anybody can do to prevent a person who doesn't mind dying to pick up a weapon and go into a hospital, go into a school, go into a shopping mall, and kill people. No one can stop that. Rubio can't stop it. Trump can't stop it. Clinton can't stop it. Obama can't stop it. So to stop blaming the president, as I'm hearing people do already, Marco Rubio blamed the president yesterday for this attack in California, doesn't make sense to me, because no president could stop a crazy person who's determined to die from doing these things. That's why my message is, don't panic. The chances of being killed by a terrorist in this country, your chances are better of being struck by lightning than being killed by terrorists. Don't let these people take over our economy, start making us buy more weapons, pass more laws so that we start eavesdropping on each other even more than we do now, because these people push this country into a state of panic.
All right, before we run out of time, I do want to kind of localize it or apply some of this to the state, because, Bernie, it seems to me that the open carry, campus carry legislation that is under consideration in Tallahassee now probably has a much stronger chance of being passed by this legislature.
Because there's a theory that you can stop an attack if you're armed. I have yet to see that happen. And another question I would have in that case is, what if you have a situation like that? The police arrives and there are a couple of people armed. Who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy?
No,
it's very difficult.
confusing.
And but it will probably pass. And it makes no difference, because ultimately, until you get a national kind of consensus, people can go from state to state and buy guns and bring them here, and mostly from here, send them everywhere else. It's impossible, and plus there are 300 million weapons already circulating. I don't know the answer.
Don't count on it passing. I don't know if it's going to pass or not, but the probability.
The campus carry?
The campus carry may or may not pass. But look, we talked about this about a month ago or so, and you mentioned John Thrasher, who is a good Republican, is now the president of FSU, was is involved in the Senate and was the Speaker of the House a while ago. And look, he's against it. And so I would rely on people like that.
Well, I hope the legislature does, because John Thrasher is a political conservative and a very good guy. I happen to like him and admire him. So, Marvin, I think that your point about not letting fear prevail and change the way we live, I was admiring of President Hollande of France, who gave a speech after the terrible tragedy there, who said, we are not going to stop going to restaurants. This is our life. We live in our city, in our country. We're going to continue. I hope, don't you hope, that President Obama tonight says something along those lines?
I would be very surprised if the President said anything other than that. It's a great moment for him to bring us together, allay some of the fears that we have, put the problem in perspective, and let the country know, I agree, we need to go after these people trying to kill us. We need to go after them. On the other hand, we don't need to let them dictate and change our lives, and that's my concern.
I couldn't agree with you more, and that includes our right to bear arms.
Can I have a quick question about that? Do you really think that the right to bear arms would stop tyranny in this country if the Army wanted to take over?
You know, we're about to go off. We're about to go off into the weeds here a little bit. A great question.
We'll start the next round table.
Come around next round table, and we will approach that. All right, coming up after the break, how you can manage your way out of the gridlock that is Art Basel weekend. We're going to take a closer look at the city of Miami. Well, Glenna's going to take the look at their plan to break the gridlock.
We can do it together.
As you undoubtedly know, traffic around the Miami Beach Convention Center almost at any time is a challenge.
It is a busy weekend of celebrations right now underway not only on Miami Beach but also in the city of Miami at either end of the causeways. You may have been in this gridlock. This is a very interesting look at what the city of Miami Beach is doing to monitor it and maybe fix it.
They're bypassing barricades, ignoring the signs, and lack of pavement.
I left the beach and went to Wynwood, and it was even worse.
The art fairs that bookend the backed up causeways for the next few days.
Man, this traffic is insane. Absolutely crazy, man.
Make gridlock growing anyway that much worse.
And that's during the AM peak hour.
Traffic engineers' graphs make visual and numerical what anyone at the wheel already knows.
Traffic on our causeways can go up by as much as 75%.
And in the neighborhoods.
They try to detour from 95 to come through here.
Miami Beach has 30+ cameras like this and Wi-Fi data collection during season, Halloween to Memorial Day, that allow for real-time road fixes.
We make signal timing changes as necessary to increase throughput on our critical intersections, and we have variable message signs.
Still, the roads are in the red. On the Miami side, a population exploded beyond its roads and mass transit. Island side, only a few ways in and out. Road construction, one causeway closed for renovation. And for the next few days, the art fairs.
And just a reminder, Art Basel Miami Beach, that ends this evening. The Art Miami ends today as well. And then things go back to what you could laughingly call normal for traffic.
Whatever normal may be in this town. All right, next, a parking lot for water and sewer vehicles just became a pretty sexy place. Could Beckham finally build his stadium? Stay tuned.
We're seeing some sunshine breaking through the clouds out there on this Sunday morning, but with that said, there are some scattered showers running along the leading edge of the stalled out front that is located just south of the Florida Keys. With that around, it will aid to the instability in the atmosphere. Later today, we could see the possibility of some showers. Will dry out by tonight, but you'll notice the blanket of cloud cover will stick around as we go into the first half of the work week. Showers will be possible, but I'm happy to tell you by Tuesday, we will notice drier conditions. Take a look at the 7-day forecast. Highs stay in the lower 80s, that chance of storms till tomorrow, and drier by Tuesday.
Thank you, Julie. The man People magazine recently called the sexiest man alive has scored a site for his soccer stadium that may be the hottest one yet, a last-minute save that David Beckham's team took to the meeting of Major League Soccer this weekend, where they approved. Here it is. It's a patchwork, really, of private parcels and a Miami-Dade County water and sewer staging area. It's west of downtown Miami, and you might look at this site and call it a blighted spot in a depressed neighborhood, but you can also call it this: historic Overtown. And in an up-and-coming river district, you can describe it as urban chic in a location already served by mass transit routes. Miami has always been dazzle and dysfunction. The dazzle is blinding and enticing, a great draw. But as we've seen on so many levels, dysfunction makes getting things done frustrating or expensive or both or impossible. Team Beckham has gotten a crash course in that over the last 2.5 years. The stadium sites on the waterfront that his team first wanted were dazzling. The most recent, near Marlins Park, came with dysfunction, political maneuvering, and property owners who may have been too hard to get. This latest Overtown site is the most attractive yet. Sexy in a way you have to kind of get to know first. If you notice, team principals are saying nothing, and that's because this deal has a long way to go to be a done deal. It involves the sale of public land, a commission vote before a skeptical public. It involves property owners with political connections, which may be benign, though it can't help but raise eyebrows. The scrutiny is now underway, but this site may be that sexy in its own way, long-term relationship that finally brings this town Major League Soccer. You covered it this week?
I think it's a go.
You do?
I do.
All right.
But
it's a good
as you
thing.
say, many things yet to see.
And what do you think? We invite you to weigh in on that or any topic you like.
And stay informed, get involved. Have a great Sunday.
Bye.